exercise influence every minute of every day. It is a power we shouldn't take lightly. Our guest, Dr. Robert Cialdini, has spent his entire career researching and living the science of influence, earning him an international reputation as an expert in the fields of persuasion, compliance, and negotiation. Dr. Cialdini is the president of Influence at Work, an international consulting organization based on his research principles. His books have sold over 2 million copies and have been published in 25 languages. So, needless to say, Dr. Cialdini's influence certainly stretches far and wide, which is why I've asked him here to join us today to share his findings and experience to help you increase your influence. Robert, welcome to Success. Look forward to expanding your influence to our Success audience.
Well, I'm very pleased to be here, Darren, and with your audience as well.
So as a baseline to this discussion, Robert, give us your definition of influence. Let's start there.
Well, to me, influence means change. Now, that change can be in an attitude, a perception, or a behavior. But in all kinds of instances, we can't lay claim to influence until we can demonstrate that we've changed someone.
Let's delve a little deeper into the elements, or what you call weapons of influence, that you've unearthed through your research. There are 6 elements, I understand, so let's discuss them one by one. The first one is reciprocation. Talk to us about this particular weapon of influence.
Sure. The principle of reciprocation has to do with a rule that exists in all human cultures. It's the one that says, I am obligated to give back to you the form of behavior that you've given to me, right? So you invite me to a party, I should invite you to one of mine. You remember my birthday with a gift, I should remember yours with a gift. And if I do you a favor, you owe me a favor. And very simply, people say yes to those they owe. So it means to your listeners that when they go into a situation where they want to be more successful, more influential, the first question they should ask is not the one that they've been taught to ask, which is, who can help me here? The first one they should ask is, whom can I help here? Whose business circumstances can I elevate here? Whose outcomes can I improve here? Because by virtue of this rule, those people will stand ready and eager to enhance your business outcomes, to elevate your business circumstances.
I mean, this is a principle we teach a lot here at Success, is be the first to give. Give first. Yeah. Give first.
You're exactly right.
Yeah. Are there any real-world examples of an organization or a person who employs this form of influence most effectively that we could sort of point to as an example before we move on to the next principle of social influence?
There's some research that shows that a server at a restaurant will significantly increase his tips if, along with the bill at the end of the meal, he or she puts a mint on the tray for each diner. A mint costs the restaurant almost nothing, but it increases tips by 3.3%, because in the moment after people have received, they stand ready to give. Now, here's the interesting thing. If what you give is not only a nice favor, but it's unexpectedly beneficial to them, people stand ready to give much more. So in a second part of this research that was done, the server put 2 mints on the tray for each diner, and that increased tips by 14%, all in keeping with the rule for reciprocity.
Excellent. Okay, so the next principle in the universal principles of social influence, as you call it, is scarcity. So talk to us how scarcity is an element of influence.
How many times have we seen on the evening news the following story? Long lines of people winding around a block, waiting for the shop doors to open so they can rush in and deplete the shelves of some particular item. Do you know what that item always is? It's something that's scarce, something that is dwindling in availability. There's a limited supply. Scarcity confers value on the very same set of merits. So, the implication is, when we present our idea, our product, our service to someone, we would be fools not to first think about what we provide in this product, service, or idea that they can't get in any of our competitors, and raise that to the surface like a detective. Point to that feature of what we have. This is a unique aspect of our product. Or sometimes it won't be a single aspect, it'll be a bundle or a combination of things that only we can provide. If we do that at the outset, people listen differently now to the rest of what we have to say.
So another weapon of influence is authority. Explain how we can use authority to gain influence without sort of overpowering the person or people we're trying to influence.
I think here it's important to distinguish between being in authority and being an authority. Being in authority is to use power and control and maybe even coercion to move people in your direction because you get to say, and I'm the boss, or else. Well, that has all kinds of problems associated with it in modern business, and very often we're not the boss besides. So we have to think about being a different kind of authority, the person who is recognized as knowledgeable, competent, expert with regard to this issue. And people will want to follow us because that's a shortcut we're giving them through the density of modern life. There's so much information in modern life that it's difficult to move without having shortcuts. And getting the information, getting the counsel of a legitimate authority, and using that as a route to change is an excellent shortcut that normally steers us correctly.
So here's one, Robert, that was unexpected to me that I love finding in your book under the heading of authority, and that is admitting weakness first. Talk to us more about that.
That's a brilliant one because the research on the most effective authority communicators tells us that that communicator has to have two elements in the mind of his or her audience. First, expertise, and we've just talked about that. And the other is trustworthiness. Even if you're dealing with an expert who you acknowledge to be competent and knowledgeable on the topic, you're not going to move in that person's direction unless you perceive that individual as trustworthy in presenting this expert information. And one way to make a connection with both of those elements, expertise on the one hand and trustworthiness on the other, is to mention a weakness in your case, to mention a drawback to your argument, right, before you present the strongest elements of it. Why would that work that way? Well, first of all, if you mention a negative as well as a positive, people know, all right, this person is knowledgeable in a general way, not just about the pluses, but also about the minuses of the situation. That's the expertise component. The trustworthiness component comes in when they say to themselves, oh, this person isn't going to just give me information about the pluses and try to pull some blanket of positivity over my eyes. They're also going to give me information about the negatives. I need to listen to this person, right? You want them attuned to your meritorious case at precisely the time you're going to present it.
Very, very intriguing. So let's move on to the next one, which is consistency, which is a key element in a lot of things, even personal growth or sales. So it isn't surprising that it's an element of influence as well. What role does consistency play in the world of influence?
Two roles, I think. One is people want to see us as consistent in the way we present the information, in the way we present ourselves, that we are aligned with what it is that we are offering them. They want to see that internal consistency there. Otherwise, that creates a question mark in their mind. Is this person confused? Is this person less than honest? What is going on here? So we want to, of course, be consistent in that way. But there's another way that people often don't think about, and that is that in order to be successful, one simple thing we can do is to recognize that the people we're dealing with want to be consistent. They want to be consistent in their own behavior and attitudes and opinions, and they want to appear to be consistent to those around them, because consistency is an admirable trait. So what this suggests is that if we ask them to take a small step in our direction, just a small stance that's consistent with the larger request we will make of them later, they're significantly more likely to say yes to that larger request in order to be congruent with what they've already done or said.
So great. All right, let's move on to the next one. And the saying, "the power is in the people," I think aptly describes this next weapon of influence, and that is consensus. Tell us how we can use consensus to persuade someone to our side of things, or simply to say yes.
Surely. Consensus has to do with another shortcut that people use when they're uncertain of what to do. For example, in today's economy, where everything is unsure, we're just not sure of what to do, and so people freeze under those circumstances. One way to move them off the fence is to give them some information that others just like them have decided to do what it is that we are recommending that they do. So, for example, we did a study in hotel rooms, right? Where, if you travel these days, you know that in 65-70% of the hotels where you stay, there's a little card in the room asking you to reuse your towels and linen. And usually they say, do this for the environment. Right? Well, when they do that, they get about a 36% compliance rate with that kind of message. We changed the message on certain cards in 3 different hotels. At random, we put different messages in rooms. And if instead of saying, do this for the environment deserves our respect, we said, the majority of guests who have stayed in this hotel in the past have reused their towels at least once during their stay. We got a 29% increase just by telling people what those around them, like them, were doing. Now, here's the most interesting part. We had a third sign. This one didn't just use the consensus principle by itself. It used a very specific version of the consensus principle. It said, instead of the majority of guests who've stayed in our hotel have reused their towels, it said, the majority of guests who've stayed in this room in the past have reused their towels. Now we got a 41% increase.
So the next weapon is the phenomenon of liking. And so is this tell us what that principle is and how it's different than the tactic of consensus.
Yes, the principle of liking. There's no one listening to this message who will be surprised to learn that we prefer to say yes to those we know and like. What's fascinating is how certain individuals are able to convince others who they've never met that they are likable individuals and that they should like them. And one way is simply to share information about ourselves that shows how we are similar to the individuals in the audience. And that causes them to like us more. It's also the case that if we tell them that we have common goals, right, that we have similar purposes together in this. That causes people to like us more, to increase the rapport. And what you were mentioning earlier, giving honest praise, it's one of the things that we underemploy.
Is there such a thing as automatic influence, or is influence something that always has to be developed and cultivated?
I think there are two levels to that question. There is rarely automatic influence on the side of the provider. That is, there are a few people who are born with the innate tendency to know just what to say and just when to say it. It's just automatic with them. But most of us aren't born that way, born masters of this art. So we can learn how to do it. And that requires some cultivation. That requires some study and some knowledge of what are the triggers, what are the strings that if we pull them will resonate inside people, right? But once we do that, on the response side, we can get very automatic influence. People will automatically move in our direction if we have strum the right string inside them that resonates with their basic human tendencies.
So, Robert, I know this is a difficult question because you don't know all the businesses that each of these individuals are engaged in. But if you were to suggest an action plan, that consists of 3 to a half a dozen things that they could do to start being more influential, for them to think about, review, inquire about themselves or their own business, to get started on being greater influences within their market, within their personal circles, what would be those things that you would suggest that they sit down and investigate about themselves or about their business to get started?
Right. And I say, let me give you 3, and we've already talked about 2 of them, so I'll just tick those off. The first is, before you go into an influence situation, take a step back and review what's available to you there, and use those 6 principles of influence as touchstones. You might say, well, is it the case that I have a lot of testimonials from people just like this individual? Then I should raise those to the surface. Is it the case that I have a lot of expertise in this arena? Well, you should raise that to the surface. Is it the case that I have a unique feature here that none of my competitors have? Well, you raise that to the surface. So review what's available to you there first. Take just a half a minute and think about, well, what are these 6 principles? Are any of them there? The second is to be first. Always go first. Arrange a set of circumstances so that people want to listen to what you have to offer. That's the biggest problem that we have. It's not so much that we don't have a good case to make. It's that people aren't willing to give us the time or attention to listen fully to our case. And then the third is, it turns out that there's a colleague of mine who's in the marketing department at the University of Florida, actually, who has undertaken a long research program to find the single most successful influence tactic. And I saw him at a conference a while ago, and he stopped me, and he said, Bob, I found it. I found the single most effective tactic. It is not to have a single effective tactic. That's a fool's game. You have to go into every situation not armed with your usual pitch, right? Because it's going to bounce off the majority of people. It might get some of them, but size up the situation. See what's available to you there. Use the situation as it emerges to you, in front of you, and make it the wind at your back now. Whatever is there in the situation, use it, and it will energize your approach.
Is that the Tai Chi sort of approach to influence, right?
I think that's exactly right.
That's fantastic. So, Dr. Cialdini, thank you very much for being with us here and influencing our thinking about influence. I think we've all come away with some great tips to help us be more influential at work and in our lives. Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, I enjoyed it entirely.
Success Magazine Audio, copyright Success Media, all rights reserved.